The GAM, whatever it was.
I said writing on your paper.
Yeah, that was kind of a scary picture there, Kyle. It must have. Yeah, I don't know.
No, it's just this weekend.
Oh, it's a no-buy one?
Where's that show?
JW.
Nobody.
No, is that the Novi?
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw your pictures came right up.
Yeah. My wife got scared.
Yeah. Said, who's that guy?
Yeah.
Now that's Friday and Saturday?
And Sunday.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah. I'm good. Thank you.
No, I'm on a
Me too.
all carb diet.
But I met her.
All card back.
Yeah. All carb diet. I gotta watch my sugar.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, all carbs.
Along
So
with
it
everything
just turns
else.
to sugar.
Thank you.
Yes. I didn't forget.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, here it is, right here.
What's that?
You got a new one?
This is a green.
Oh my gosh.
St. Patrick's.
Call it 11 feet.
Is it crooked or is it my eye? It's gotta be.
I'll tell you
Wait
what.
a minute.
he comes up with the best thing.
Okay.
So what was that rule you were just talking about? Was it 18-2 for the sand trap thing?
Yeah, 18 that or
put it as a
dash
boss.
2
Thanks, Sam.
slash 0.5. 276.
I was kind of wondering, I figured if the sand moves and the ball moves, he's got to put it back.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the.
Right.
Published Dustin Johnson the other day.
Yeah, that's
We're
what
gonna come up here for it.
Jerry was asking about.
Now it's expansion in there. It's like
You got the
a
Google
blur.
Is it fuzzy?
It's been 2 hours, 3 hours now, so.
Depends on how much stuff they put in. Sometimes it lasts 6 hours.
Yeah, that's true.
According to Mayo Clinic,
Exalted.
Where's my pen?
Is that yours?
Mhm.
Yeah, I know that. Jeff's
Can I have my pen back, please?
Jeff's. He's reading.
Oh, bro.
That's a nice pen.
I'll go get it.
Okay, he looks pretty studious too.
He's in the zone.
I know.
$500 pen.
Oh. I thought that looked pretty nice. I was hoping nobody claimed it.
He kept it down here.
It is. My wife got 3 of them for $1.
See, you signed up for a couple of ones. Thank you, by the way. You signed up for a couple of them where I was the only guy signed up.
I saw your name on there, so I said, I'll go
I
with
did
it.
mixed things. When I said it,
I need Kyle to help me out on
I
one.
guess I should-
Which one? Is he gonna pick you
Yeah,
up or
well,
something?
it was filled up down at
Yeah, so it was 15.
Dearborn Country
So.
Club.
Mhm.
I only had 14.
I put my name in on
And
it,
he told me,
and I said, you know, I know the spots are
Late
filled,
1980s.
and I wrote a little thing, and the spots are filled, but I'd like to go to it, because I have a friend down there that lives about a mile
Yeah, that was a sneaky one.
away, so I have my wife go to her house,
It wasn't.
and then we'll all go to
Well, I
dinner
changed the
after.
word word out.
What was the definition? What's the answer?
Mhm.
I was on that course once when they had a
Yeah, I know.
senior open down there several years
Oh,
ago.
yeah.
Mine was.
It was a senior.
Review.
You were a senior, so
Probably,
Yeah, he
yeah.
told me.
No, I went down and watched. Oh, okay, watch it.
Yeah, probably
Because
before
I
they,
did three, whenever
they
I
had
had
it. I think they had it at TPC for a while. It was
the answer
probably
was
before that.
3.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
2/2, and I had.
Well, we have a friend that lives right there on Wilson Street, just up around the corner off
So I didn't
of
really
that
like-
little.
One made a true, one made a false, and so that's.
Military road.
I still want to name it.
Yeah, you come, you go right by the course, and then you take a left, go up there. Is that?
W&A.
It's not that-
I mean.
Anyway,
I
on that course
walked
once
It's right up there.
ago.
No, I'm sure they'll allow people drop. So. Never know.
Well, Chris, just
He's
make
on
you rover.
vacation.
So what did this
No, I don't
translate
need a
to
rover.
for Dustin?
That's for guys.
Basically, what I read there is he'd have taken his stance and the
And all
ball
you
moves, he's got a
smart guys.
2-stroke penalty.
One stroke probably flew the ball and went back.
He signed up for some, finally, or whatever.
I don't know if he's gone for the winter. Not nothing, not work.
Craig says he's gone for the winter, and then he signs up for the AGA, and then he signs up for the other. Marv.
So he did it anyway, so what he did,
He's done some.
he knew that if he
Yeah, he
moved,
just
it was
signed
gonna be a penalty.
Yeah,
Well, that's why he confirmed it.
yeah, I saw your name on a couple that were,
To do with the speed.
there was nobody else there.
Well, those are the new ones he put in there.
So what did the
Yeah.
official tell him? He says, no, you're trying to take your stand.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stony Creek is over.
No,
Even in, not if you're inside that.
Rules official?
You're working that, you don't have to.
Okay, so you just give me your badge or whatever.
Whatever it is, I think.
So he still,
No, you don't.
he had no choice in the matter but to play it. Take his win penalty
I do
anyway.
pay because I play seniors on Wednesdays. I play Springfield Oaks and Indian Springs.
You got a pass. How you doing?
Charlie?
Make a stance.
It's only.
You want to, what do you really want?
Still.
I used to.
He ended up putting his foot in the first stance. And,
Oh, yeah.
shots.
I was watching him do that. I was, that's a nice, when I said went on the TV, I didn't, did they explain that on TV at the time? I didn't hear that part. The announcers just said,
I heard you talking to him.
I saw your name on the one.
The official told him you're allowed to take your stance.
you heard
Took some
that
of
on
those out
TV?
there because,
You're allowed to
it's
see
not
your
a bad
stance.
drive going up.
I didn't hear that. I was watching the whole thing, you know, I didn't hear him say anything.
I wasn't watching. So.
But,
You got good ears.
Well, Clio's
Clio's a good driver.
Well, you know,
My wife says.
Except when she's talking to you, then all of a sudden you can't hear very good, right?
That's what she said. Yes, so I can hear it.
Yeah.
Get off.
about an hour.
I mean, I'd rather drive there than drive down the road. Because the traffic.
Yeah, that's why I did the Clio.
I like the Rose deal.
Years
I
ago.
think the first one,
No. Two or three of those
Had a deal.
early ones.
600 million.
Might be ones I school still.
Oh,
I'm not.
When you meet.
yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't even know.
No, they
Somebody set the
just
meeting.
kind of, you just kind of.
An executive vice president and vice president.
Yeah, whatever.
General managers, several directors, and CEOs.
Yeah.
So as part of my responsibility for arranging,
He's
even though
not
I
around.
He's in Lansing. He lives in Lansing.
had to go to
Yeah,
gifts.
No, no. Oh, I don't know where he is.
Because of the Japanese culture,
He's in
you can't put
Mexico
Mexico
right
right
now.
gifts.
I just did a quiz.
So I had to find a way to get gifts that were of a different value and then wrap them in different colored paper so I know when I handed them out,
Yes.
who's handing what gift to whom, that it had the appropriate value as indicated by that person on the opposite side of the table. So we bought a number of,
Oh, that's what you bought, last year's or something.
Yeah, well, last year they got the G model.
gift and executive.
Somebody asked the question.
I know that guy.
And they went from,
Zero to
24
G.
year old.
This one's
So
anyway, I went in there, I
Except that wrapping paper.
Exactly, and then I had to get all of that right and have them wrapped so that all the gifts were identical.
I think I got them all wrapped and then forgot which color goes with which
Exactly
pen.
right.
I marked the shit down on the table before I ever wrapped them up.
Anything over
But at
500.
the end of the day, you know,
You got $100.
the EVP that was with them, came back and just gave me a
It came to like 6:35. So that was.
Usually I do back. Well, you know, there's a game.
Then I could use it. My birthday when I turned 80.
Yeah.
So,
They were terrible to deal with.
Money coming out of your ears.
Yeah, well,
Everything was like.
that's the only
you had to
thing.
deal with
That's another-
that directly. And,
We went to.
after we bought the presses, they wanted to try it up. And I stand there and we agreed to do that. And I said, okay, so at least it's And we're gonna put money in, you're gonna put money in.
Afford a new
We'll
driver.
take the cash we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can afford a new driver, you know. Because you can afford a new
By then I had moved on from business.
So
planning to
finally,
finance,
we're
and I
walking
picked up
out,
this
my wife
project.
says, go ahead and buy your new driver. So then I went back. Well, what I did there was I traded,
We arranged a meeting in Toronto.
my kids walking over to grave saying,
Yeah, yeah. How could the dandelion not where you treasury?
I had drivers free ride and license.
They have meetings here that are bigger than the meeting over there, so you
But the
gotta.
guy on TV said that.
I said, there's this.
So I traded them in.
Taylor, I'm still in that. I know I can't.
No, he's still in the
Well, you know what? I tried,
Things right up. Car sold. And
Callaway, XR,
Yeah,
He's
well,
got
they-
gray hair.
they-
this guy is
He is.
sitting there.
He's a sharp kidder.
He's a step away. I'm Taylor's
And the hair is
house.
perfect.
I want to try his too.
So there's 100%.
7 years old and she's what?
The Callaway,
Leveled out at 19%. We had to him that.
That's
because
a-
he told me
more
they
power
could
to
have 60,
I got
90.
Taylor.
But
Taylor,
I think
she's
I
further.
I know it's there, I tried, I'm like, yeah, they got to get up.
Because
They
I
said
had
some chicks
Taylor.
to get them a lot of money without right.
Oh, but you know, they work together. You
They're very unhappy.
I had the
So they
Taylor.
flew back to New York. I
Five,
drove
eight,
back to Detroit. By the time I got to Detroit, they'd been on the phone. They called me. I mean,
Yeah.
The weight on the pain was like this. The Taylor was like that.
So I took them out.
Yeah, so he should. Well, it was like,
At this position here at 90% capacity, they get 16% return on their investment.
because of the make of the club.
So I'm gonna get under the scale, I'm gonna take it under.
Get a shot that's not.
In the event the six are good,
You're gonna go further off.
They got,
Taylor.
you know,
all of a sudden, that's just walking. I guess that answers
she's
my
near.
question.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, that would do it.
6 months later, carbon production, we went to
So his friend.
which would let them grow
Like I say, I was-
their investment that they hadn't made.
I can't write, oh, I love
He
it.
usually finds
So
out.
we had done everything, and they were just walking out with money, and then they.
Yeah, when we go. Have our days.
Yeah, and then it was, six
I
later
had
here.
And then all the things he said, so she was like,
They got caught, and did it.
Yeah, I had.
And the other 4 guys.
Oh,
ended up coming back
two
too,
natural
but it's
diseases.
just like, oh, shit.
That's why we was.
That's why you guys were, yeah.
Yeah, and then
We were all
and then I
over
was
the
making- I was making some cars.
Yeah, well.
I just had a trouble. But you know, when you're playing with that, you're better.
Yeah, you play better.
You play a little bit.
They called it a little wheezy.
All right, yeah, well, let's go ahead and get started for today. We're gonna really quickly go over Rule 34, which we didn't get to last week, but we're just gonna go over it here really quickly. It's fairly self-explanatory, but we'll just go over it here. So again, I guess first off, thanks for coming out and braving the roads. And for those of you on the call, hopefully you're not in Michigan because it's snowing again. Gosh darn it. But anyways, let's get right into 34 here. Disputes and decisions. Basically, this is the committee in a match play situation. So going back to a claim, if the claim is lodged with the committee under Rule 2-5, a decision should be given as soon as possible. So what that means is basically we want to give it to them as soon as we can, but we're not required to give it to them right away. And we want to make sure that we have the right ruling before giving them an answer. And we'd like to do it before the match gets too far along so that they can know the state of the match. But if we do need to wait a hole or so to get them the right answer, that's better than giving them the wrong answer and then having to go back and fix it later. And then the last thing here, it says that if a claim is not made in accordance with Rule 2-5, it must not be considered by the committee. So if it wasn't made in a timely manner, it's not going to be considered. So if they don't, if they say, I think you're doing that wrong, that's not a claim made under the rules as it's supposed to be. You need to say that, you don't get 3 club lengths from the car path. I want a ruling. You need to say something along those lines, in order to make a valid claim. And then there's the whole timing component as well. It needs to be done before someone tees off on the next hole, or in the case of the last hole before the players leave the green. All right, and then this one other comment here. There's no time limit on applying the disqualification penalty for a breach of Rule 1-3. So basically, if the players agree to waive the rules, you can disqualify them at any point in time. There's no limit, even if the competition has already been closed. And then a couple of cases here where the penalty of disqualification must be imposed after the competition is closed is, again, Rule 1-3. If they returned a scorecard in which he had recorded a handicap that was before the competition closed, he knew was higher than whatever, yada, yada, yada. So basically, if the player recorded a handicap and they knowingly did that and it was higher than what they actually were entitled to, they're going to get DQ'd even if it was after the event's over. Or in stroke play, if the player returns a score lower than actually taken for any reason other than to include a penalty that before the competition was closed, they did not know he had incurred. And then the last point kind of covers a lot of different things. It's basically if the player knew before the competition closed that they violated a rule for which the penalty was disqualification. So if the player knowingly played with illegal clubs or illegal balls or something like that, that would be a situation where you could DQ a player after the fact. But had they had a 15th club in their bag and it was, not according to the USGA guidelines, they didn't know that they had it in there. So in that case, they wouldn't get penalized. But if they did know that they put it in there, then they would.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah.
Those exceptions are to 34-1B.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I must have just typed it up wrong.
Here it is.
Let me just
You left out 34-1B, which says you can't impose a penalty after the competition is closed with those exceptions.
Stroke play players. Must be imposed. Right, okay. So yeah, sorry, so basically, let me just fix this really quick so there's no confusion. This is just stroke play.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's, okay, so then, John, thanks for pointing that out. So then, I just want to read this so there's no confusion here and for my own understanding. So,
About that penalty. Yes.
sorry?
About the penalty.
Yeah. So it says here that these in these cases the penalty, in these exceptions, the penalty must be imposed. However, in stroke play, a penalty must not be rescinded, modified, or imposed after the competition is closed. And then the competition is closed when the result has been officially announced, or in stroke play qualifying by match play when the player has teed off in his first match. And then these exceptions are when a DQ penalty must be imposed. All right. In terms of a referee, again, in match play, we talked about this last week, but the referee's decision is final. As long as they've been appointed by the committee to be a referee, their decision is final. and cannot be challenged. So when you're out there with your match, you have the ultimate authority. You don't want to parade that over the players, but just know that whatever you decide is final. But people are there to help you out if you have questions as well.
Even if it's wrong.
Even if it's wrong, yeah. Okay, and then here 34-3 committee's decision. In the absence of a referee, any dispute or doubtful point on the rules must be referred to the committee. The decision is final. So this is, if we didn't have a referee with each group, or we had observers out there with a couple of groups, we would refer the claim to the committee, and then the committee would make the ruling. And likewise in stroke play, if there's not a rules official out there, the rules official does not have the final say in stroke play. It's the committee that has the final say, and that if you are a rules official out there, you can always refer back to the committee. But at the end of the day, if you do say something that's incorrect, it can be corrected by the committee. So let's say, for example, that you tell someone that when they move their ball in the fairway, or they accidentally kicked it, that was a 2-stroke penalty. Well, it's actually a 1-stroke penalty, and then the committee would come in and say, no, that's not 2 strokes, it's 1 stroke. But if you told the player that as an official, if you told the player that they can get relief from, I don't know, let's say that you told the player they can take 3 club lengths relief from a cart path, and they did that, even though that's incorrect, since you told them they're okay. But if it has to do with a penalty and it doesn't affect, or it does affect the amount of strokes, like saying that a penalty is 1 versus 2 strokes when it's the opposite, we can fix that.
How are we dealing with, as an observer? We don't have enough referees, so I've got 3 holes, and I'm kind of running between 3 holes. And now there's a decision. If I know the ruling, I can make that and help them, right? But if there's any doubt, then I should call in.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, feel free to call them before or tell them and then call in after. I mean, we can always change that because again, you're, as the observer, you're not the referee, and the committee can always change it. But we'd like to change it like as soon as. Right after you told them, not like 3 holes later, or when when the match is over and they come to the clubhouse, because at that point it's too late.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't intercede unless they ask you to.
Right.
Right.
Right. But as an observer, you're kind of running back and forth, and they're waving and they're going.
And that's true. If they wave you over, then they've asked you to intercede,
right,
and determine what's gone wrong.
Got it.
Unless they call you over, you can't say anything.
Right.
No matter how egregious it used to be.
Yeah. Unless there's 3 situations, right? If they waive the rules, if there's a etiquette thing, or what's the other one?
If you observe.
Yeah.
Undue delay.
Undue delay. All right, and then this last point here just says that I'm not even sure if it's not in here, but basically, the other thing is if the committee themselves cannot come to a conclusion, they can always refer to the USGA, and then whatever the USGA says is final. So you may have something where we all call it in, and Craig and Nick and Ken don't know the answer, and we might have to call the USGA, and like they don't answer their phone. Then we just kind of wait, or we make a decision and that's final. Or if we don't know, we can always call the USGA, get a ruling from them, and their decision is final. And so a lot of times we'll see this from our standpoint at the Golf Association. People will call us in and ask us a ruling. It may be after the fact, but we always get 1 or 2 of those a year where someone was playing a match at the club and they couldn't get an answer, so they called us, and then we tell them hopefully the right answer, and then our decision is final when it comes to that. All right, key decisions here for 34. All right, I'm going to switch over to 6 here. I'm sure everyone, I know we didn't talk about this last week when it came out, but I'm sure everyone saw that the USGA got rid of their 18-hole playoff for the US Open. So now it's going to be a 2-hole
Aggregate.
playoff. Yeah, aggregate.
2.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So, but I mean, I think it's good that it's not 18 holes. I know they talked about a lot of their examples where, you know, or maybe there's something else I read where even though that duel with Tiger and Rocco, you know, was great. I mean, it probably would have been better to just finish it off right after. I mean, so then all the volunteers and the officials and everyone don't have to come back, because one of the articles I read basically said, like, I forget which one it was, but one of the playoffs, like, everyone gasped when the putt went in or missed, because all those volunteers and people knew they had to come back the next day to be there for 18 holes. And, you know, they could care less. Yeah, exactly. They could care less who wins. You know?
Why did
They just want to go
decide-
home.
Yeah, exactly.
I was surprised though that it was a 2-hole. not a
That's
3-hole.
what I was just asking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Why isn't
Well,
that
the British is 4, right? Or the Open Championship's 4.
3 here?
correct.
Yeah.
And the PGA is 3.
3.
Would it be sudden death in after 2 holes?
Yes.
Not another.
Is it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Then it goes to sudden death.
Sudden
Right.
death, yeah.
Masters is
Just sudden death, yeah. Or sudden victory.
sudden victory.
You
Sudden
like to
victory.
be positive.
They just go to send 2 holes from the.
I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they just picked 2 so that every single major was different. I don't know. But
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I don't know. I mean,
Maybe depends if they have a leak coming out later.
yeah,
Yeah, right.
I gotta get the numbers out there that day. So.
How do you get the beverage card on the horse?
Back at Pontiac Country Club.
Yeah.
All right, Rule 6. So the player and his caddy are responsible for knowing the rules. We all know that this never happens, and that's why we're out there, because the players don't know the rules for the most part. A lot of them do. I'm kind of saying that half jokingly, but a lot of players do not know the rules, and you know, especially at the pro level, I can understand why that they don't want to know the rules, because they're playing for a lot of money, and if you can get a professional to help you out, why risk thousands of dollars on just because you think you know something, when, you know, really they're probably more focused on how they can hit a fade or a draw, as opposed to how to drop correctly from a water hazard. All right, handicap. So in match play, before the match starts, the player should determine from one another their handicaps. So the player begins a match having declared a handicap higher than that he is entitled to, and this affects the number of strokes given or received, he is disqualified. And if it's less, the player is just going to play off that handicap. Now you can imagine a situation where the player might mistake their handicap, but their course handicap strokes that they actually get might not be affected. So that would be a case where there's no issue, even if they wrote down 8.4 and they were really 0.0, if it didn't affect their course handicap, then there's no issue.
You mean their index?
Correct. Yeah. If they wrote their index down as an 8.4 instead of an 8.0, but if the course handicap calculated out to be 10 for both, it wouldn't matter. Yeah. Now, in our events that we do, you know, we're going to be getting the handicap on the card, and the player is obviously responsible for making sure that that's correct. But you know, we're going to do that. This is more for if you're out playing at the club or something like that, where if the player doesn't have the right handicap, this kind of covers that.
That you make adjustments to handicap sometimes. So
Sure, right. Mm-hmm.
you may not know. You may not remember.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
The slasher.
Yeah. That's good. or playing different sets of tees.
Yeah, exactly. There's that,
And matches where it's blue and
that
white.
adjustment, yeah.
You have to adjust the blue, compensate for the difficulty on this team. The player doesn't like it at all.
Well, you could always take strokes away from white instead of giving strokes to blue.
Exactly.
But
It's
it's
the
picking the
same
worst of
thing.
two evils, right?
Exactly.
You used to have that big issue with, you know, you start getting to the players to a certain age,
Right.
right? And they want to play,
Shorter tee.
and then the club didn't want to make the adjustment the correct
Oh,
way.
wow. Yeah.
We're fighting that issue now with the men's association. Sorry,
Right.
USGA says it's just a valid tournament. You have to have accurate handicaps. We have to adjust accordingly.
Right.
So. See how many clubs are throwing this year.
All right, and then in stroke play, you know, the same thing, that the player needs to make sure that their handicap is correct. If it's higher, then they're going to get disqualified. But again, it all comes back to if it's higher and if it affects the number of strokes they receive. If it doesn't affect the number of strokes received, they're just going to continue to play the match as it was, or play the round as it was in this case. And then again, here is the player's responsibility to know the holes at which the handicap strokes are to be given or received. So typically for our net events, we will dot the cards so that they know. And if it's match play, we'll dot them off the lowest, or if it's stroke play, we'll dot them based on the holes that they should get them. But if they weren't dotted, it would be on the players to know when they do receive the strokes.
So do you just net out always? So if you and I are playing, you're an 18,
Right.
right? I'm a 2,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm not going to get 2, and you're not going to get 18. You're going to get 16. I get 0,
Correct.
and that's how they should always do.
That's
the
how it should be
differentials.
done, yes. Mhm.
Got it.
Yeah.
Where should it say that?
That's in the handicap manual.
Okay,
Not
that's what I thought.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not-
No, it's not in here.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that's how you do it. And I forget the exact reason, but I believe it's because that you don't want the players getting strokes. I forget exactly what it is. So basically, it just makes it simpler, and it avoids the good players from getting an advantage over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because the number 1 handicap hole is supposed to be the hole where someone getting a stroke in a match most needs a stroke.
Right. There we go.
And
Which doesn't always come into play real well. But if you understand how to handicap the hole,
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That brings up a whole.
well, that washed off before I left.
All right. 6-3 time of starting. I think everyone knows this, but again, the player must be there ready to play. So the key there is ready to play within, and if they're not ready to play at their time, they're going to get a 2-stroke penalty if it's within 5 minutes. After that 5 minutes, they're going to be disqualified. And so when it comes to timing, it's really important that if your tee time is 9 o'clock at 9 minutes and 1 second, you're late. And then when it comes to that 5 minutes, the same thing. 9:05 and 1 second, you're DQ'd. So it's very, very specific, and that's why we like for our officials to have watches or clocks so that they, especially the starters, and we have the clocks in there so that we can enforce that if we need to.
And that's right off of the GAM clock at the first tee.
Correct. Yes.
Right?
Correct.
And what constitutes it, Mr. Starter? Is he there? If I'm walking from the door,
Isn't also the player has to be ready to play. It can't be like if we have a tournament where they have caddies, the player's there, but the caddy doesn't have his clubs there.
Then he's not ready to play.
He's not ready to play. So he has to be ready to hit the ball and play.
He's gonna have ball in hand, club in hand.
so if he's
ready to
coming
tee it
down
up.
the cart path with this driver dragging along and a ball and trying to hurry, and you're right there, he's got to be up to you,
Who is he, the player or
the player. The caddy,
the player has to be on the tee,
on the tee. Okay,
ready to play. Because he may be the first one
right.
that has to tee off.
Right.
But number
But all
4,
has to be there.
They all have.
They all have.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what order they're going to.
Order of play doesn't matter.
Okay.
In that case, but they all have to be ready. Now there are a few examples where there are some exceptions. So if we turn to
The car accident.
6-3A/2.5.
6 dash.
Here's a page.
21.
Oh, sorry, it's 1-5 or
You want to use
1.5.
all the exceptional circumstances?
Yeah, 1.5.
It's on 100.
Page 100. Yeah. And so in these cases here, we have five situations that they bring, and then the decision says which one would the player be where waiving the penalty would be okay. So player gets lost on the way to the course. Heavy traffic results in the journey to the course taking longer than expected. A major accident results in the journey to the course taking longer than expected. The player's car breaks down on the way to the course. The player was present at the scene of an accident and provided medical assistance, or was required to give its statement as a witness and otherwise would not have failed to start on time.
Number 5.
And so it says that only number 5 would be an example where an exceptional circumstance would be in place where they would not get penalized.
That's the only one, right?
Right. So, we get it every year. We have there's traffic and whatever, and it just it sucks. And whenever we get those calls, I just always tell them, just get here as fast and as safe as you can. But it's just important for them to plan. I mean, most of the time players plan to get there like an hour ahead of time. So even if they are running a little late, usually they'll just miss out on hitting balls. But there's always those couple that get there, hit a few putts, and go to the tee. And if they run into any traffic, they're in trouble.
They're cooked.
So. There's a couple other situations where a player would be okay for being late. If there's a delay on the tee, if the fairway is not clear to play, the player could be late and it's okay because they're not able to actually hit. So in that case, they would be okay. So if it was 9:03 and the player showed up, but they were still waiting for the group ahead of them in the fairway to clear, no penalty.
And weather delay, same way.
Weather delay or. So there are a few situations, but for the most part, if they're not there within the second of their time, they're going to get a penalty, and then after 5 minutes, they're going to be DQ'd.
So always pull your club out of your bag.
Right. And we always do a pretty good job of making sure players get there, and I know that everyone here has different opinions on it. I mean, I personally hate doing that, but if we do make a concerted effort to make sure people get there, and then I know starters always do a good job of calling in if the player's not there, and really at the end of the day, this is just my personal opinion, so take it or leave it. But if it is at the end of the day the player's responsibility to be there, and from my standpoint, if they're not there on time, that's their fault. And if it's something that we did or that we didn't do to make them be late, maybe the first and the 10th tee weren't clearly labeled or it was hard to find. Given the golf course, that might be something where I would feel a little bit more willing to take someone over there. But most of the times, if I know someone's late or you guys call and say I'm missing this person, if I see them, I just tell them you better run to the first or 10th hole and I'll point them in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, if we continue to give them rides, they're going to keep being late, and sometimes they just don't learn unless they make a mistake.
Kyle, I heard it at the big tournaments like USGA and all those, and I agree with you.
Right.
The USGA does not call and look for the people.
Right.
No.
So you're either there or you're even penalized or it's fault.
The rules are the rules.
Right. And I could see why you want to do it, and a lot of times they'll say, and I've seen this at certain events too. The starter will say after they're done starting the one group, the 9-10 group is on the tee, something like that. I mean, that's fine if you want to do that, but one of the problems that we run into, and we actually had this happen last year at I think it was the USAM, and it was the Michigan qualifier at Forest Acres. One of the players was not there, and the player's parents. The player was in college, and the parent the parents got pissed off that we didn't come with that we didn't call it and get the player to come over, and it's like, your kid's 20 years old and come on.
Yeah,
Exactly. But you know, one of the things that she said was that you guys usually call people over to the tee, and you know, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It just depends. And so, you know, from a universal standpoint, my thought would be to not do it, and make the players be there on time. And we also do a lot of things to give the players the opportunity to see the clock. We put the clocks up on the putting green, on the driving range, to make sure they know what time it is, so there's no confusion there. But you know, obviously, we don't want players to be late. And at the end of the day, if we have to help a player, and, you know, maybe it's different for a 10-year-old kid versus a 50-year-old guy. I mean, if a 50-year-old guy is late, I mean, sorry, I'm not going to go get that guy. I mean, you know, God bless him, but if he needs to get his life together if he's 50 and not showing up.
Right. You wait till you get to be 50.
Sure, exactly. Right. But yeah, no, I mean, it's always something that comes up. But at the end of the day, it is the player's responsibility to be there, and I think that you know, we definitely don't want players to get penalized if we can avoid it. But we also, in my thought, need to consider that, are we enabling people by doing this? And so I'll just leave it at that.
I gotta eat a half an hour early to get to March today.
Really? Yeah.
Doesn't show up.
I thought you were the hammer. You're starting to sound like me.
Yeah.
All right, and then this note here, it says that the stroke player and competitor must remain throughout the round in the group that's arranged by the committee, unless the committee authorizes or ratifies the change. So sometimes you'll see this. I don't know if it's happened. I don't think it's ever happened here. Maybe it happened at my previous job. But we had foursomes in a junior tournament once, and we go out there about an hour or so after, and there's two twosomes, and they're like, what just happened? They're like, oh, you know, we're the last group and we're waiting on every shot, so we figured we just go into twosomes to make it go. And it's like, you can't do that. But you know, so I mean, like a junior tournament, we didn't DQ them or whatever the rule says that they have to do. We just told them to get back together and enforce them, and that you can't do that. But you know, you might have a situation like that where you have a foursome, and it might be beneficial to break them up for pace of play reasons. But as long as the committee authorizes it, you can do that. And then the other thing that we'll get to a little bit, but sometimes you may have two twosomes to start off, and the guy in the first group might just decide he doesn't want to play anymore. He had enough fun in the front nine and doesn't want to continue to the back. So in that case, that single is going to get merged into the twosome behind, or vice versa. The single is going to get bumped up ahead. So in those cases, groups can change. It just needs to be authorized by the committee. So we don't. Anytime we see groups getting like sizes changed, it's always a good idea to let everyone know. So if someone does walk off the course, just let the official in charge know, but also let all the other officials know as well, so that when they see them on the fifth hole and they walk by, they're not, do we have a threesome out here? Or do we have why is this group a twosome? So if we do a better job communicating that, then everyone knows why. And we know you're not listening to everything that comes in the radio. So it's going to happen. But if we can't communicate that, it's helpful for everyone.
You see that a lot in 36-hole competitions where after 18 they decide to play real bad, so they don't want to continue.
Or 26.
Exactly.
After a quadruple bogey.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything from 18 to 36, wherever it goes. It's 95 degrees out.
You get that double-digit hole score.
Could have used that once.
Yeah.
All right, next section here, caddy. We really talked about this last time when we talked about match play. It was a question that came up, but in match play, if the player has more than one caddy, it is a state of the match adjustment. And then if it does happen between the play of two holes, it's going to apply to the previous hole and the hole and the next hole. In stroke play, it's going to be 2 strokes for each hole at which any breach occurred. And then again, in stroke play, if it happens between two holes, it's going to be 2 strokes on both the first hole and the second hole there.
How many times are you allowed to switch caddies?
Every hole if you like.
18.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
But not between holes.
You can switch between holes.
Yeah.
So you got 2 guys, and you want one for reading putts and one for.
No.
No. If
It's got to be between holes.
well, you could technically you can switch.
No, you
No, because if your
you can
caddy
switch
hurt
that
himself
But
halfway
not
through the
two-
hole,
not
you could
two
switch.
caddies at one time.
At one,
Right.
yeah, but you're got a caddy that carries a bag. You like him to club you, so you hit your 7-iron onto the green. Then you reassign the bag to caddy B. He carries the clubs all the way up to the green, and he reads greens.
Raise your putt.
After you sink your putt, you reassign to a caddy A.
I think there's a decision here about that.
I don't. I mean, basically, at one time is a word that or a phrase I don't understand. You like your friends.
All right, it looks like 6. Let's see, 6-4/7.
Yeah.
But then I think the decision we want to look at is actually 8-1/26. Let me just look that up because I think we're talking about using caddies for different skill sets.
Skill sets.
So that's 8-1/26 is on page
41.
141.
Yeah.
Briefly changing caddies for exchange of advice.
Okay.
So okay.
Briefly, okay.
In view of the fact that a player may change caddies during a stipulated round, may a player briefly change caddies for the purpose of receiving advice from the new caddy? Now, it would be contrary to the purpose and spirit of the rules for a player to change caddies briefly for the purpose of circumventing Rule 8-1. Advice, therefore, in equity, the player would incur a penalty of loss of hole in match play or 2 strokes in stroke play for each hole at which the action occurred.
So if you did it every hole, you're down 36.
Match is over after 9.
Yeah, really.
Thank you very little.
No tip for the caddy.
Caddies.
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 That's right, yeah. You split this dollar. 6 dash. I knew that you.
And so you can see there, I mean that's actually a good example, Mike, where you get reference to another decision,
Right.
where it talks about those related decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you might not find the exact place, but it's nice that they put those in there so that you can get to the one that actually answers the question you're looking for.
I knew you couldn't do it. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Wanted to test everybody.
Yeah, I wanted to test.
Make sure that we're all on top of it today.
Especially JW.
Thank you.
I didn't hear you speaking up either.
All right, and then the last thing here with the caddies is a player having more than one caddy needs to stop having more than one caddy and tell everyone as soon as it's been noticed. Otherwise, the player is disqualified.
But people can carry stuff for you outside, if you will, outside the ropes. Umbrella, water, food.
Exactly.
Correct,
Your
yes.
mother, we have parents that carry stuff all the time.
Right.
Little notes.
Little boats.
But if you have a
Well, I had
caddy,
to call something in last year though.
Right, I
They
mean,
can't
yeah.
walk down the
They
course
can't-
of the
they
play,
can't
they
carry-
gotta be outside the
It was pouring down
Something like
rain.
that, but they could carry an
And it was
umbrella
winter
or a
tournament.
rain
Yeah.
jacket or something like that,
Right.
or food, yeah.
Carrying an umbrella for the player
Over the player again?
when they were walking. And I called it in, and it was such a nasty day. They said, "Go ahead."
Ordinarily, if they
We're talking
carry-
about a parent in a junior tournament
Yeah.
pouring down rain, holding the umbrella because the junior player was carrying his own bag. So in actuality, she was a caddy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they have caddies? Usually they don't have caddies. In junior.
Well, no, they allow their
juniors can't have their parents for a
Friends.
caddy, is that right?
Right.
well,
Oh, you know,
APGA.
it was the US Junior?
And
no, it was
APGA.
some other junior tournament
Ah, okay.
because I called it in and whoever was in charge said, because it was, yes, she's your caddy. Tell her, because I waved her off at first.
Right.
And 2 holes later, I told her that it was okay. think it was your boss, but I'm not sure.
Do we allow that in the GAM juniors? Can they have a caddy?
No, so so for our U.S. junior qualifiers, whether the boys or the girls, they can. That's USGA. For
Right,
GAM
but
events, no.
but it can't be the parent, right?
It cannot be the parent.
Or is that in the
or a
AGGA?
guardian. No, that's the USGA.
Okay.
AJGA doesn't do
AG
caddies except for
Yeah, they
like, two events. Like
Because I've
Sawgrass.
caddied in it. I've caddied in it for my buddy's son, who, because they don't allow their parents, cannot caddy. But you can have an adult who is not the parent caddy.
It was a US
AGGA.
junior. It was a US junior.
It was a U.S. junior.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so U.S. junior can't be a parent or a guardian, but it could be brother, sister, friend, whatever.
Is there a general rule of thumb for how far away parents or observers should be from the players? Because sometimes they're walking close and they're talking. And then I had a situation in a junior tournament. A girl came up to me and said, I think that they're giving this one advice. So I went and told them that, separate and stay away. But I was just looking for a rule of thumb. You say everybody has to be 20 yards away or 30 or 25 or what?
High schools, we use 30 yards.
30? Okay.
Yeah,
You can't hold up the group behind.
Right. And they can't walk down the fairway. They have to walk in the rough line.
And the rough line is about 30 yards. Because I've seen where, not on the hole that I was on, but I look across the course sometimes, I'll see people are standing on the side of the green. And they're that close to, and there might not be a rules official at that hole, and it's, it could be 4 holes over. And
When they come by, you just let them know that you need to maintain a distance from the player.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a set distance, I think that's fine. I mean, there isn't one. I mean, I don't. I would never prescribe saying that to someone. I think usually what I say to them is that the reason that we have you guys stay away is because if we perceive that you guys are talking and it's advice, it's going to be a 2-stroke penalty, and you may be talking about anything, but if it looks like it from our perspective, we have to protect the field, and your daughter or your son's going to get a 2-stroke penalty.
we don't know what they're talking about. You really don't.
Exactly.
They're walking on the fairway.
Right.
They can't protect you from errant shots.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And try to encourage them to be 4 caddies, to get them out and down the fairway. That way you're really separating. That's what we do in the high school stuff too, is trying to get, are we okay to 4 caddy? Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's where we want you.
wanted to see if everybody else had some different thing than I
Right.
did. I always thought like 20 yards. I try to keep them, stay 20 yards away and stay off the fairway. So.
I think the last thing, that, well, maybe not the last thing I want to do, but one of the things that I'm always concerned about is, I mean, in junior events, our players are our customers, but so are our parents, right? Because they're the ones that are footing the bill most of the time, and I get a little leery about telling parents that they can't talk to their kids, just they can't give advice to their kids, or they can't do anything that might help them with their next shot, whether it's calming them down. I mean, you could have a dad and a son walking down the fairway talking about the Lions. They're not talking about anything golf related, but it really might calm them down. And in that case, even though it's not golf related, I would still say that is helping that player. Whereas if a mom or dad says, "Hey, great shot," or do you need a banana, or here's this, whatever, or hey, the Lions just won, something like that. I mean, that's not advice. So I don't think we want to tell people. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We just don't want to tell parents that they can't talk to their kids. We just make sure that they can't give advice. And then most of the time, you'll get people that will say, "Well, my kids won't listen to me anyways." Or,
Right.
I don't know anything about golf or not. I'm not. So it's like, it's just a precaution, and we also just want to make sure that you're not calming them down or something like that, because that's not. They're out there on their own, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, the situation I had, another player came up to me and said,
Right.
I don't know if they are or not, but isn't there something that they're not supposed to be close to them?
Right.
So I said, okay, I'll take care of it. And I did.
Yeah, no, I
No
think-
problem.
I think you handled that well, and
Yeah.
just in that case, you probably just ride with that group for a couple of holes and make sure, and then I'm sure as soon as you go away, the
The parents were very acceptable to what I mentioned to them. That I said, just stay away. That way, other players don't think that you're giving advice.
Right.
So it was, they were very nice about it.
Sure.
Or the other side of that is you get a child, especially in the girls' juniors, like at number 3 or 4 Sacred West. You take a big number there, and they emotionally fall apart before they get to the 4th tee. And you're looking for that parent that was following that child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
I had to take one crying in Bedford Valley the last hole. She was tied for the lead. She took a 7, and her mother says, I could see the girl over there like this. And the mother comes over and says, could you take her in, please? I have a hanky, too. All the way in. She just bawling her eyes out. So.
What was worse, that ride or riding back to the tee?
Yeah.
It's always quiet.
Yeah.
Tissues to me.
I just happen to have some napkins from somebody bought me lunch.
Mustard from your hot dog.
Yeah. It was her last tournament.
But no, yeah, that's a really good question, and I mean it does happen out there, but and this
I think that
Spectators,
30-foot rules
Yeah.
are pretty good.
it's a good rule of thumb.
Rule
for
of
sure,
thumb. Yeah.
for sure.
It's good.
But
Thank
not,
you.
but not something that's set in stone. That's actually in the rules. It's just a good rule of thumb. So,
Tell them stay clear.
and most of
Feel basic lesson.
right. Most of the parents understand it. It's just the ones that don't, or the ones that are trying to do something. And there's probably a handful of people out there that have a reputation for doing that. And, we know a lot of those people, but I've seen everything from like signaling club selection to, it's you do have to be on the look for it, because they're. A lot of times it's a dead giveaway whenever the player gets ready to hit. They look over at the spectator, or after they hit a shot, they look over at the spectator.
What right you're wrong.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah.
Maybe we should put a sign out there that spectators do not go on the fairway.
Yeah.
I mean,
On number 1, or
Yeah.
10.
I kick them off.
I go on the
Yeah.
fairway all the time when I'm spectating, but it's usually to cross to look for a ball, or I just walk there because it's shorter and I don't want to walk all
Because
over.
it doesn't only happen with parents, it happens with observers too.
Sure.
They'll have friends or something on the side. And
Right.
Us,
Anyway.
people observing the match.
Fans,
Yeah.
spectators,
Oh, it's okay.
not
I'm gonna say,
not
we don't
parents,
have, we don't have friends out there.
We get hit enough.
Us? Us officially.
Good information.
Wait, we have like 84 enemies every time. we go out there, right?
Or like,
184. You get the
I like when the
player.
parents come up to you, they start talking, my son was sold, sorry. Drive off.
Kid really hitting that stuff.
All right, and then this last comment here, this is what we were just talking about, the U.S. Junior Amateur and the U.S. Girls Junior. The committee may restrict, either prohibit, so like we do in the GAM, we don't allow caddies for our junior events, or restrict a player in his choice of a caddy, which is what the USGA does for their 2 junior events. All right, and this is what we covered last week, so we won't go over this.
What did we cover last week?
It was basically just when a player has multiple caddies
Okay.
and how the penalty is applied if it's between holes. And then let's see, the ball player. Each player. So here's the key: each player should put an identification mark on his ball. They don't need to, but it's a good recommendation. And especially if someone else in the group is playing the same ball, it's a really good recommendation, because that could end poorly if they hit it in the same spot. So usually I know our starters do a good job of this, but making sure that asking the players what golf ball they're hitting, and if they have some that are similar, to make sure that they put an identifying mark on it. So. it's always important for the starters too to be careful when you ask the players to show you their balls. It's always good to get golf balls in there. I know.
Wait a minute.
I think Jeannie was telling me a story. One of the starters was saying that, and the group there just started dying laughing when the starter said it. And she's like, she looked at him, or the starter or whatever, and said, "What are you talking about?" You gotta be careful, especially with the younger kids. The kids, and then like the the amateur qualifiers, the ones where they're still a little not so much mature. So like in my
Obnoxious job.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. But,
Identify your golf ball.
exactly. All right, so it's 6-6, so scoring. That's pretty important here in stroke play. So it's the player's responsibility to make sure that the hole-by-hole scores are correct. And again, here is a recommendation. It's recommended that the player check the score with the competitor after the hole is completed. So a lot of times, it's just a good idea to just say, "Hey, Frank, you made a 5 there, correct?" And then Frank would answer that question one way or the other. But just a good way to do that instead of just writing it down and then they're sitting in the scoring table, and we've all seen this where these players are trying to recall a shot from hole 2, and then we have to draw it up for them or get a scorecard out to show them what it looks like, and then they can't figure it out, and then finally some like caddy comes over and says, "No, you made a 6 in that hole," and then it's done. But so it's always a good idea to do it after the hole is done so that there's no confusion going forward. After the completion of the round, the player needs to make sure each hole is correct with the score. They need to sign the card and then have the marker sign it, or anyone that kept score for them. So when we do have withdrawals from the tournament, I know a lot of you guys do a good job with this, but it's just important if someone does withdraw that if they kept score for someone, they need to sign that card, and then we reassign or reshuffle the cards. But in that case, you may have a player or a card have three or 4 signatures on it, depending on how many people actually kept score for it. But anyone that kept score for the player needs to sign it.
Should also make sure you check off which hole the switch occurred. So the one is responsible up to this hole, that was responsible from there on. If you don't do that, then you get in there, well, which one are you verifying? You don't know. You just know there's signatures on the card.
Right. Yeah, no, that's definitely a good idea to note that on there, for sure. If we have any questions after the fact, it'd be a good idea to note that. Right. Not required, but a good idea, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then if we don't have 2 signatures on the card, there's going to be a DQ. I think I told the story last year, but I'll tell you because it's funny. But in my previous job, we had this player, and she played in a lot of our tournaments. And this round, she played awesome. She made a hole in one, and her dad really wanted the card after. So I go in, and we have our staff and our interns going and checking the cards, and I go through and I pull up the card. And I see the 1 right there with a nice couple circle, and then I see 1 signature on the card and not on the other. So before I give it to the guy, I just scribble really quick and say, "Hey, here you go." Probably not the best thing to do, but in that case, she wasn't in contention, whatever. But we do need to have 2 signatures on the card. If there's not, it's going to be DQ. Unfortunately, we had a situation last year at our girls' junior where we had one player DQ, and she didn't sign her card. But at the end of the day, it is that player's responsibility. We just hope that we can catch it at the scoring table to prevent that from happening. So usually, if you do scoring, it's always good. I like to keep like a 5 check things for an 18-hole card. I check the first 9, second 9, the 18-hole, and the 2 signatures, and I've got my 5 checks, and I know that it's good. And I won't let the players leave unless they just drop a card and go. And yeah, we'll just keep them there until I get those 5 checks. And then usually I like to add them up or type in the computer, read it back to them 9 by 9, and then 18, and then just have them confirm that as well.
Yeah, I hate when they don't add them up.
Yeah.
So I like to add them and verify them against what they had. Even though their math doesn't, because if my math's different, then you go back and double
It
check.
doesn't matter. They're not responsible for that.
I understand.
That's why you don't worry. You just
Yeah.
I
do the whole
understand,
scores
but
and add them up yourself. Then they have to dispute you as long as they say that their whole scores are correct.
Correct. Yes. No, but it's always. I mean, we always try from a running tournament standpoint. We always try to give the players a total before they go, so that they get that confirmation. And a lot of times, the players just drop it and go, and do so at your own peril. Because if you go and you don't sign a card, or you add it up, or you put the wrong number down,
hold by
and you
holes
leave,
wrong.
sorry, you're gonna face the consequences for that. All right. See, here it says there's no alterations being made on the scorecard after the competitor's return to the committee. Typically, there's either a set area for scoring that's defined. A lot of times you'll see or at PGA Tour events, or I think even the Michigan PGA does this as well. They have a scoring area, and they usually put like a blue line or something like that to signify once they cross that blue line, they now have left the scoring area. But if we don't have that, it's kind of open to our interpretation. But usually, if the players, like if we're at 4 stakers, for example, and we do our scoring out by the scoreboard, if they're within that scoreboard area, we can still, in theory, say that they haven't left the scoring area. But if they went over to the parking lot and got in their car, at that point in time, they're kind of SOL. So. Then here, if the player puts a score that is lower than what they actually
It's not
took,
chocolate. No, it's
they're going to be disqualified.
It's not chocolate.
Time out.
I don't like that hard candy.
Candy break.
He wants hot chocolate.
But yeah, so again, in scoring, if they write a score that's lower, they're going to get DQ'd. If they write a score that's higher, they're just going to take that higher score. Now they do have the option to fix that before they leave the scoring area, but once they leave the scoring area, they're done. And a lot of people get confused that once the card is signed, has nothing to do with when the card is signed. It's when they leave the area. They can still sign the card and fix it as long as they haven't left the scoring area.
It says return. You can't make an alteration after you return it to the committee.
Right.
In other words, that means leaving the scoring area. Okay.
Right.
It's kind
So I mean, a lot of every event's a little bit different. So a couple weeks ago, I was in Arizona for this college event, and what they did was they had a box. They said once it goes in the box, it's official. So it just
all depends.
everyone does it a little bit differently. I mean, sometimes it's at least for our events, it will be until you leave the scoring area, you can make any changes, whatever. There's no issue with that. And then this exception here, so if the competitor returns a score for any hole lower than actually taken due to failure to include one or more penalty strokes that before returning his scorecard he did not know he had incurred, he is not disqualified. And in such cases, the competitor incurs the penalty prescribed by the rule. And now this last note is standard, but we're going to have a local rule that's going to get rid of this additional penalty. But if you don't have the local rule, they would get the penalty prescribed by the rule that they didn't know about, and an additional penalty of 2 strokes at each hole at which the competitor had committed the breach of the rule, or writing the wrong scorecard or the wrong score down. But this year, there's that local rule that we talked about at the very, very beginning, that the player is only going to get penalized for the breach of the rule, not for writing the wrong score down on the scorecard.
What have we decided?
I believe we decided to use that. I'm like 99% sure, but I don't know what the 100% certainty.
We call this the Lexi Thompson rule.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're not sure anymore what's going to be the Lucy Thompson rule. Every time you turn around, she's in trouble.
What you do now?
You move the temporary immovable object.
One of the
Obstruction.
European things.
Obstruction.
She moved to temporary.
I think this was 2 weeks ago, wasn't it?
She's
Got 2
well,
strokes.
she was overseas. She separated, and then 2 of the workers moved for her.
Right.
A sign that was considered permanent for the purpose of the tournament.
Oh,
They were told.
Oh, they were told.
so she didn't listen.
She didn't listen, or Caddy didn't listen.
Yeah, that's two
Yeah.
people.
Fellow competitors didn't listen.
Right,
Cost her two, but two didn't cost her the tournament, so it doesn't matter.
right.
I mean, it does, it costs her money.
Sure, exactly. But I'm sure the sponsor paid more than it cost her money.
Yeah.
It's probably worth it for the sponsor to donate to the purse.
So they got more revenue for the sponsor that had the sign. Everybody's looking
Yeah,
at this.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Everybody's looking
It was
at
actually
the
probably good
advertisement.
for them, wasn't it?
Yeah, Joe's tool and die.
All right, and then here again just says that the committee is responsible for the addition of scores and the application of handicap record in the scorecard. So again, we are responsible for adding, not the player. The player can add it up if they'd like to, but they're not required to.
Nor are they penalized if it's incorrect.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly. If it's incorrect, then that's just they need to do better in math class. Or they need to use a calculator, a phone, or something like that next time. But yeah, no penalty to them. And then in 4-ball stroke play, so I think I don't know if I talked about this in this one, but yeah, in 4-ball we want to make sure because we do quite a few of these events, we want to make sure that the players record the score for the player who actually made the number and not just the team score. So in order to fill out your card correctly by the rules of golf, you have to put it down. So Dan and I are partners, and he makes a 4 on the first hole, and I make a 4 in the second hole. We can't just put in our team score column 4-4. It needs to be 4 under Dan for 1 and 4 under Kyle for hole 2. So that will let us know who made the score on which hole, and it's really more important for handicap events. But even for gross events, it's important that it's tied to the player, because we may find out after the fact that I got a penalty that caused me to be disqualified for the hole, and if I see that Dan and I both made 4 on that hole, it doesn't really matter. But if we just write 4 in the team score, then we have to figure out what Dan made, because my score is not going to count anymore. So there's always things that come up, and it is actually required by the rules for them to put it under the player's name, not the team score. All right, I think we've talked about this quite a bit, but we'll just go over it quickly. Undue delay. So if a player must play without undue delay and play within the pace of play committee or the guidelines established by the committee. So we have a pace of play policy that we adhere to, and that's something that is communicated out to the players. I believe it's on the back of their scorecard, and then it's also up on our website, and we also give you guys a copy of it as well in your packet.
Don't we have to sign our life away before we tee off too?
I think that we don't do that anymore, but I heard that before I started.
No, it was like last year we had to sign at the first tee. You had to sign to say you understand them.
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah,
Was it 2 years?
It was pre-me, so I think it was almost 3 years
Okay.
ago.
2 years ago, I know for sure, we were
Yeah.
still signing. We didn't have the boards up last year that I recall.
Well, maybe it was 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh, if the PGA has that or not.
I had them on the first tee for you to sign, and we ran into issues because of weather and then signatures getting smeared or not catching every guys that got up there, especially the junior events more so than the regular.
Right.
But 2 years ago was when we were really trying to push those hard. Last year they kind of,
Sign your life away.
you know the rules. If you don't, we're penalized.
Right. The other thing that I heard, and I forget who I heard this from too, is that I think it was an issue at the USGA qualifiers where I think it was like at the Senior Open or something like that, and some like former tour player or winner or something like that. I said, I'm not signing this. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, basically.
Right. So, but I mean, yeah, we definitely do everything we can to get it in front of the players so that they know it. And we're also, as the round is going on, we're communicating with players as necessary within the limitations of the pace of play policy.
So on the first tee, essentially play ready golf.
Right, exactly.
Unless you're in a match, in which case you play quickly.
Right. All right, the general penalty set up for undue delay. And match play, it's a loss of hole. Stroke play, it's 2 strokes. And then if it happens on the second time, it's disqualification. However, the committee is able to modify this if they would like, and they can modify it to a different structure where the first offense, well, in match play, I guess it's a little bit different, but in match play, the first offense would be lost hole, the second offense would be lost hole, and the following offense would be disqualification. And in stroke play, you could modify it so that the first offense is a 1-stroke penalty, the second offense is 2 strokes, and then the third or anything subsequent after that is disqualification. And so, to my knowledge, we do not do this. So in our case, it's either a 2-stroke penalty or DQ. Well, 2-stroke penalty first, and then DQ if it happens again.
Saw that 2 of the groups were put on the clock Sunday.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it wasn't the last group, wasn't it? Or the
Last two.
The last 2.
Yeah.
And then you never heard another word about it.
No.
So, and there was still almost a whole hole open.
Yeah.
And you never heard another word about it.
They're not gonna.
Yeah, the players know that too,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
You're
Making it to us twice as
Explain
bad. So,
to Sharma,
How to
how to play.
how to move
we removed that on the cables and wires.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I did
I
see
thought
that.
that was nice of them to help them do that.
Well, yeah, if someone's uncertain and someone else has the knowledge to tell it how to do it because they've had it done so many times before.
Yeah.
I mean, that's always an assist, and if you don't see an official close by, and if you've already been told you're on the clock, you don't want to stand there and turn around with the
Right.
kids.
I think you could hear Mickelson on there. He says, yeah, here's how you do it.
And then like yesterday,
Ridley
Ridley,
penalized Mickelson on the 17th hole or something.
Yeah,
It's not gonna happen.
no, they would lose a lot of fans if they did
You
that.
let the atomic bomb going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it's pace play is always an issue that we deal with, and I think at every level they deal with it. And there's certain things that have been put out there. I know that for one of the European Tour, I think they call them 6 series or 6 or something like that. They did a shot clock for shots. So I mean, I think it's possible. I think or something like that. I think it's possible in the near future that there could be a shot clock out there on tour, which I mean is kind of crazy if you think about it, but at the same time it makes sense and it gets people doing things. So,
right, USGA's got.
Yeah, I do.
do they?
They don't use it often, but yeah, they have shot time.
Yeah.
Well, like an actual shot clock though. Like
Oh yeah, yeah. But you mean like basketball?
Yeah,
put
exactly.
the shot clock out on the course.
They use this for
Well,
the
yeah,
European Tour. I think it's called their 6s. They do like 6-hole match or something like that. But they actually had it out there on a cart.
Yeah.
And they had the clock, and it was 30 or 40 seconds, whatever it was. But if it dinged the penalty,
Should have the big air horn hooked up to it. Like it's about here. That would probably get them going a little faster.
right? Sure. But, yeah. So I mean,
Looking
but
at
you
the
know,
clock.
there's lots of studies out there that show that you can still play fast and still play well, but at the same time, you know, I think for the health of the game, I would make this claim is that if they would have penalized Phil Mickelson on the 17th hole, I mean that would have just been a nightmare.
Right.
Yeah, because Mickelson's going to say, hey, 3 weeks ago you had
Right.
JB Holmes at 4.5 minutes.
Yeah,
Right.
really. Yeah.
And he didn't get dinged, so now you better show me why.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's always, it's the group itself instead of the one player usually. I don't know who was slow in that group or if it was anybody, but
Yeah, it could have been Phil because he was being Phil and he was all over the place.
Yeah,
on a
Phil's-
couple of those
Well,
holes.
several holes, you had to have rulings, they'd
Right.
come in
Yeah.
and rule on what was
Yeah,
there.
they were on their-
when
their whole group was on the clock
when
when
their
their last couple
he
holes.
wanted to
Yeah.
move back.
oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he came out of there.
Why did they move?
You could see the smoke coming out of his ears.
They quieted that microphone down real quick.
Yeah.
You can see the ball coming out of the hedgerow and going toward the spectators, and instead of backing up, they're leaning in to see.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, and then the ball goes back behind the tree.
So the next shot was unbelievable.
Yeah, the
Oh,
next shot was
yeah.
great. Yeah. I think Faraday said like Phil's in a land of his own. He's like,
Yeah,
you know,
He's
yeah.
places no one's ever dreamed about.
He's very creative.
Yeah.
All right, discontinuance of play here. So the committee may suspend play for a couple of reasons. If they believe it's danger out there for storms or lightning. They can also do it if it's dark. It's getting dark. The committee can suspend play. Now the player can suspend play in the following circumstances as well. But the player must not discontinue play unless the committee has suspended play. He believes that there is danger from lightning. So in that case, even if the committee hasn't blown the horn, if the player feels that it's dangerous out there, they can actually discontinue play and not be penalized. However, if it's determined that it was safe to play and they discontinue play, that they would be subject to penalty in that case. Right. And the player can discontinue play if they're seeking a decision from the committee or on a doubtful or disputed point in match play, or if there are some other good reasons such as sudden illness. So a couple years ago in the women's AM, on the 36-hole final on the second 18, one of the players had, I don't know if she had heat stroke, but she got overheated, and they took like a 10-minute break to allow her to cool down and get back to normal. She ended up losing, so it didn't help her. But that would be a case where the committee may suspend play. Now that was a match, and those are the only two players on the golf course. So I mean, they were willing to wait 10 minutes there. Whereas if it's a stroke play event, you may not have that luxury to wait 10 minutes. That player may need to go out there and continue playing, and if they can't, then we'll have to figure out what we need to do.
So
They
the
did that
referee
with,
could go ahead.
With the is it the U.S. Open? With kid from Columbus. Drawing a blank.
Jason Day.
Jason Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, was that in the
Oh
U.S.
yeah.
Open where he
it was.
had
No, I think it was
vertigo
it was
or
over.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was. It was at
he
Jason
fell
Day.
down, laid down.
Yeah, he had to sit down a couple different times.
Right. Yeah, and in that case, they just
Probably off and on about 5-minute period at a time.
Yeah.
and they just kind of held up the groups behind him, which I mean, makes sense. I think that's the right thing to do there for sure.
Right.
Well, the reason they held the groups behind him is because they didn't need him off the course. They kept him in that prone position
Right.
until he could get back to his system.
Right.
So you couldn't have somebody play through while he's at it.
Yeah.
Of
Right.
course.
Right.
I'm gonna hit my shot in that bunker right where it's
Take it off, maybe keep it out longer.
All right. All right, and then this statement here: bad weather is not of itself a good reason for discontinuing play. So again, the player needs to really believe that they're in danger from lightning. But if the committee is doing their job, they should pull the players off before a player would feel the need to do that. But it is the player's right to do that if they feel that there is danger from lightning out there. And if the player discontinues play without permission from the committee, they must report to the committee as soon as practicable. And if they do so and the committee considers their reason satisfactory, there's no penalty. If it's not satisfactory, they're going to be DQ'd. And the exception in match play is that players discontinuing play are not subject to disqualification unless by doing so the competition is delayed. So if it's a round of 32 at the Michigan AM and two players don't want to continue play, they can do that. But in this case, because we have the round of 16, well, I guess that wouldn't be a good example because it's 16 would be the next day. But let's say that it was going in the afternoon, 16 and 8. We had the round of 8 after. In that case, we couldn't hold up the the competition. So in that case, they would need to continue playing. But if it was just, you know, Mike and Frank playing at the club, they could just go out and say, hey, you know, I don't want to play in the rain. Let's come back later and finish it up, and that's perfectly fine in match play.
2 days later.
Sure. 2 weeks later. 2 rum and cokes later.
Wouldn't be much
I'll
golf.
struggle along, Mike.
We'll make it.
And then that last note there just said leaving the course does not necessarily constitute discontinuing play. So a player may have to go to, you know, off site to get medical assistance, or they may need to go to the clubhouse to go to the bathroom. That's not discontinuing play. All right. When the play is suspended by the committee, the players. So basically, we have 2 scenarios here. We have the one where it's suspended because of a dangerous situation like lightning or whatever. In that case, all players must discontinue play immediately. They don't have the option. Whereas the other situation, if we're discontinuing because of darkness, the players do have a choice here. So they can continue playing the hole that they're on, or they can stop where they're at. And a lot of times you'll see this on the pro tours that they'll have a guy, you know, when it's getting dark, they'll have a guy finish and run to the next tee and hurry up and hit a tee shot so they can finish their 18th hole or another hole. As long as one player in the group has started, that group is entitled to finish that hole. On the flip side, one player can decide not to finish and the other ones can continue to play. But the player is only allowed to finish that hole that they started. They can't complete another hole. So if the entire group was on hole 17 and no one got to hole 18 and the horn blew, they could finish playing 17, but they couldn't start 18. However, if I put out on 17 really quick, run off and hit a tee shot on 18, and then Mike and Frank are still putting on 17 and the horn blows, they can finish 17 and 18, and I can finish 18 as well.
But the last person has to finish putting out before you can tee off.
No.
No. Stroke play.
When did that change? Because it sits on the rule book before. You can't do that.
No.
Then why does it, even the pros, if he stands there and he waits for somebody to tell him that the last person's put it out before he hits?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that.
I've seen
They've done it.
Well, sure. Guy to the tee to hit.
Yeah, I don't.
like it was getting dark or something. Too.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I don't. It's not in the rules. I don't think. Right. I mean,
Not that I know of.
yeah.
I think it was like the referee there was allowing him to do it, so he was right there.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess there definitely needs to be someone there to see the shot, so that can get verified. I mean, we wouldn't want a player just hitting a tee shot and then no one around and then being like, oh, that shot never happened, and then grab another one out of their pocket. So I think there would need to be someone observing that. But if you have 1,000 spectators, you got yourself covered there. Yeah. Or a rules official or something like that would be
There's a marshal on the tee.
right.
Yeah. As long as there's somewhere to observe.
Kyle, just from experience, make sure if it's lightning, you make them stop right away. A couple of years ago, we had a tournament. All of a sudden, I'm getting a call from the GAM lawyer at home. I guess there was a player that didn't stop with the lightning and did the next shot. And I guess he was going to get disqualified. He's saying that an official said it was okay, so the lawyer was calling all the officials in that tournament to see if anybody.
Bloomfield Hills.
Okay. You guys know
I was
that.
there.
Yeah.
He's the little.
I wasn't the one that told him that he could continue, though. But I was in that whole vicinity.
Okay. It's kind of scary when you're getting a call from that lawyer.
Yeah.
You get a lawyer at home.
I got a call from that lawyer. He asked me.
Yeah.
Because I was there, yeah.
Really? Number 6.
Now, I would think it was 16 or 13 is the hole the guy was on.
No,
Yeah,
he was
the
playing on
halfway
6 because I was working the fairway on 13.
Yeah.
And his ball landed there after the horn.
It was up by the halfway house, I thought.
Yeah. No, that's the maintenance building.
Something like some building out there.
The maintenance building's there, the halfway house is behind the maintenance building. That tee box is up here in the corner.
Well, I picked some guys off the course and took them right by that area, but there was nobody that I saw.
So I wasn't aware of what.
Somebody reported because they had the name of the player.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, that's something that should be discussed on the first tee. If you anticipate bad weather, for the starter to go over that.
Well, you never
If you
know.
hear the horn for bad weather,
Play stops.
discontinue.
Exactly.
And I think this was a gambler too. And he says, "Don't you talk to anybody else about this but me.
Right.
Till this is settled."
Wow. Did you hear the same thing?
Yeah,
All of us did.
Yeah.
I hope it was settled by now.
I hope so.
Okay, all you guys are going down.
I was on the housing whole work right.
You're on your own this year.
Yeah,
You're on because the building was, it was determined, the maintenance building, there was going to be no free relief from that.
What?
It's integral to the course.
Yes.
So they determined there was no free relief from that maintenance building. So that's the reason I was there at that landing zone. There's a group of trees 20 yards over where his ball landed. And he landed right there in the edge of the rough in the trees. What the hell, that horn sounded. I was trying to wake people up, of course.
That thing fall out of the
balls were
tree?
flying.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's Jada. That's really that's why the penalty for a player that doesn't stop playing is DQ, because if they don't want the other players in the course to assume that it's okay to continue playing. So we definitely want to get players out, and then there's actually a decision here that talks about when we would be willing to modify the penalty for disqualification. So it's 6-8 B/7. And then, okay, so here's some examples of when the player hits a shot after the siren and what would be justified. So after the siren is sounded, a player finishes assessing his shot, selects a club, and plays a stroke, taking approximately 30 seconds to do so. In that case, the player is still going to be disqualified. A player approaches the ball and taps in a short putt, all within a few seconds after the horn blows, disqualified. Player having addressed the ball steps away momentarily, addresses the ball again, and then completes the stroke within a few seconds, disqualified. The player having addressed the ball completes the stroke without hesitation, no penalty in that case. So if they are not address the ball and basically making that stroke within seconds, they are going to get disqualified. Now, there's always that situation that happens, and I think there's a decision in here about this as well, is if the player may not have heard the siren based on where they were in the course. We always try to make sure as officials that we're spread out so that everyone does hear it, but there may be a situation where the player doesn't hear it. And in that case, the player would be resolved with that as well. But most of the times, especially on a lot of the courses that we're at, the courses Parkland style, there's really no excuse for them not to hear it unless we have we didn't charge air horns or something like that, which happens from time to time. So but yeah, we definitely want to do everything we can to get the players off the course. When the players do leave the course, they are allowed to lift the ball. They don't have to, but they may lift the ball. And a lot of times, it's a good idea if they do lift the ball to make sure they mark it with multiple tees, because especially if the weather's going to be bad, that one tee might move around, or a coin. The superintendent or the staff out there might rather have that quarter than you knowing where your ball's at. Always a good idea to make sure that it's marked. And alternatively, you can leave it there as well, the ball. A lot of times players will leave the ball there with like three tees around it, and that's totally fine as well. And we'll see here when we resume play, that player is going to be allowed to pick that ball up, clean it, and place it back, or put in a new ball if they'd like to. So there's really no penalty for the players leaving their ball out there. If they do pick it up, though, they need to mark it. So anytime we do have that suspension of play, really, if it's a dangerous situation, it's it's probably best just to have the players leave their ball out there and get in the clubhouse as soon as possible. And chances are, if it's a pop-up thunderstorm, we're probably going to be back out on the course in an hour anyway. So there's really, in that case, there's no need to mark your ball. But it might be maybe it's 7 o'clock and the thunderstorm rolls in. In that case, the player may want to mark their ball and take it with them. The player lifts the ball without a good reason to do so, they fail to mark the position of the ball before lifting it, or they fail to report the lifting of the ball, they incur a penalty of 1 stroke. And this decision here just talks about an explanation of a good reason to lift. And it just says here that generally the ball should not be lifted unless the player is required to leave the area where his ball is located and is likely that the ball may be moved or taken by an outside agency in his absence. All right, so when it's resumed, the player is always going to place under a presumption. So whether the ball, whether they know the exact spot of the ball or not, they're always going to place. And then if the ball is out there, like we talked about, they can lift that ball, put a new one back if they'd like, or replace it with the original ball after cleaning it or whatever that they'd like to do. And in this case here, if the player's ball or ball marker is moved, including by wind or water, while play is discontinued, a ball or ball marker must be placed in the spot from which the original ball or ball marker was moved. So in this case, even though the object or the ball may have moved because of natural reasons, natural forces, we're still going to put the ball back to where it was if that movement happened when play was suspended.
But you get relief if the condition change where you like casual water, abnormal run conditions. In other words, you come back and there's
it's casual water.
then
Yeah,
you go to your nearest point of relief.
Definitely. Yeah, you could still
You put your ball.
You have to figure out what the original
Play the.
Yes. Put it back and then
Right.
take relief from there. Yeah. Yeah, because you gotta put that ball back so that it has a place in the golf course, and then you take relief.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before you
Yeah.
take relief.
Okay, and this just says even if you don't know where the ball, if it's impossible to determine where the ball was, it just must be the spot must be estimated and the ball placed on that spot.
When you're marking, I usually tell them to look at some kind of, like if you're by a tree or if you're by a yardage marker,
plate, yeah.
make some kind of reference that way too.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, because a lot of times, that ball is going to move or the marker is going to move, and if they have a general idea where they're at, then they're going to get in a better place than just kind of guessing. So we didn't talk about this, but if the play is suspended because of a dangerous situation, like lightning or a tornado or something like that, it's going to be 1 air horn blast, long air horn blast. Anytime that play is suspended for darkness, it's 3 short air horn blasts, and then anytime it's resumed, it's 2. That's the guidelines, and they would when I say they, the USGA would prefer that all associations do that the same way, so that when players are playing different places, they know what to expect. But yeah, so 1 is lightning or dangerous situation, 3 is darkness, and 2 is resume play.
Looks like we usually do.
To resume?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I always blow 2. Short blast.
Yeah.
But I mean, most players know. I mean, after they've been sitting in the clubhouse for 2 hours and they go on the golf course, they hear a horn there. Chances are.
Right, let's play.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully they can figure it out.
Those decisions. Oh my
Right. Yeah. That's another thing that happens sometimes. A lot of times, players, if we do resume play, if we are going to blow an air horn, if they do start before that, that's a problem. Now it might be, there's certain cases where the player would be okay. But there's a decision in there that talks about a few situations when the player starts early and what happens, and whether it's going to be a 2-stroke penalty, a disqualification, or if there's no penalty at all. There's a couple situations in there. Sure.
It's actually a disqualification, then you make a determination. Otherwise, then it's just
Right. Okay. Sure.
so it's the ability to modify the qualification.
Right. Right. All right. So a lot of key decisions in this one.
Really?
But, well, I don't say most of these, but when you start seeing the 6-6D, all those are key because that was when they instituted the new rule about that being changed from where they previously, if they incurred a penalty that they didn't know about, it was just DQ. Then they instituted the penalty for the offense, and then a scorecard, two-stroke scorecard penalty. And so the reason those are in there is because it was new, maybe not because it's key.
I like the movies.
Where we go next?
33.
So you think they're going to redo a book,
Yes.
the whole decision book also? Or just,
It's going to be called the handbook.
It's going to be called a handbook.
well, I got that, but
Won't be
that's,
any decision when they start.
it'll be, well, a lot of these, most of these still relate to.
I mean, it will have a lot of the.
Doctors know.
Yeah.
It will have a lot of the principles in there. They just won't be in as decisions. So they'll just be. I forget their exact wording on what they're calling, but basically it's going to be clarifications on a certain rule, and it will have some. So like one of the things we talked about, I don't know. Hopefully we'll get to it 18, but one decision that we're talking about at 18, that one's going to be in there because it's going to determine how you determine if the ball was moved by natural forces or it was moved by the player. That one's going to be in there. It's just how are they going to format it or classify it?
No decisions have been made, so it won't be any
I assume it's pretty
decisions.
close to what the content
Well, I
is.
think they got to take the decisions and roll them into the rules.
Right.
Well,
That's my thought.
They've cleaned up so much and about so many of the penalties.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, Jeff, I'm moving on.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So Kyle,
You're right, very good.
Yeah, John.
in 2019, in addition to the rules, there's going to be guidance
Correct. Is that
rather than a decision.
right? Okay. So that's what they're calling it. Guidance or guidelines or whatever.
Is it same book or different?
It'll be within the handbook, correct, Dan?
Yes, it will.
Yes.
Did they put not the draft in there? Wasn't March 1st they were supposed to come out with the?
No, they said that by the end of March.
March 31st.
So that's March.
15 days or
32nd.
March 32nd.
March 32nd.
30
What's today? The 7th.
Or March 55th.
March 32nd, so I get the legal one, sub 8.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so the committee must establish the conditions under which the competition is to be played. The committee, however, has no power to waive a rule of golf. I know that we've talked about some situations on how we'd handle them in different situations, and I think that's probably maybe a little bit more lenient than what the USGA would like us to do, but unfortunately that's reality. And sometimes when we do modify the rules, so to speak, it's for good reason. We're not disagreeing with the USGA that moving or grounding your club in a hazard isn't a 2-stroke penalty; it should be a 1-stroke penalty. It's if the kid is shooting 140 and they grounded their club in a hazard, is it really giving them an additional 2 strokes, is that really going to do anything for that player other than make them never want to play golf again?
Yes.
So I think there's a difference, and maybe I'm just saying that to justify the reason that we do it, but there is a slight difference there. Here, the committee may not reduce the number of holes in a stipulated round once the play has commenced. So the stipulated round is 18 holes unless otherwise stated by the committee. So if the committee, or maybe we had bad weather coming through the area, we could reduce the stipulated round to 9 holes. We could do it
Put their picture on the board for us.
So
That was Lee.
yeah, I think it was. But anyways, so if we did have weather rolling through, the committee can make the decision to change from an 18-hole stipulated round to 2 9-hole stipulated rounds. And what we do is after the 9-hole, we score them and then send them back out for the next 9. But that way it would allow us to at least use 9 holes for a score. Otherwise, if you don't reduce the stipulated round, you get through 12 holes and you got a gully washer, you know, the round's going to get canceled, or you're going to resume from that point on the next day if that's possible.
So if you look to 14 and under, right, when we play 12 holes stroke play and 9-hole match.
Right.
Yeah, we did like 9 holes of 4 from the front and 5 from the back or something at the senior Belvedere.
Yeah.
So you can't, if you started around and you had torrential downpour early and it washed out 16 and 17, you can't modify the tournament to have it only 16 holes before. You have to
do it before play starts. Even though nobody's played the whole 16 holes.
After play starts, the only thing you can do is wipe out the round
completely.
Yep. Modify the tournament to say 16 holes as opposed to 18 holes.
Right.
And play a new round with 16 of those holes out of position. You can make that the stipulated round to 16.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
And you would have to wipe out the scores from the guys that already played.
And then you just start them over again.
If the group had only gotten to 15 when the belly gusher hit, doesn't matter. And they wiped out 16 and 17.
And if people had finished 18, they were
no, but nobody ever finished. Nobody ever got to
15.
They got to 15 and they stopped. Could you eliminate those 2 then, or do you have to go back and redo the whole thing?
Stipulated round was 18 holes. You can't modify that.
Right. Correct. You could probably modify the hole because it hadn't been played, right? So
if nobody had played the hole.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Nobody played those 3 holes or whatever.
You still have to play 18 holes, but you can modify the holes to turn a par 4 into a par 3 in order to make it playable. But you couldn't just say scrap those holes.
Gotcha.
So you could go and say we're going to go over to number 1. This is going to be number 17, but the tee's here. It's going to be a par 3.
I guess maybe you could do that. I mean,
somebody hadn't played it yet.
I was more thinking along the lines that if you had a big pond of or a temporary water, casual water in the middle of the fairway, and then you just move the tee up past that casual water so it doesn't interfere. You can continue. I think actually, you could just you could say holes 15 or 16, 17, and 18 are going to be 1, 2, and 3. I think you could do that as long as no one can play them.
But you do have to have a stipulated round.
Like those guys that were on 15 had already played 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
So
they couldn't.
Well, they would play it twice.
Yeah.
So everyone would play 1, 2, and 3 twice. Is what you're saying, right?
To make 18
Can
holes.
you do that, or do you have to change the tees?
I think you can do that.
Repeating the holes.
Not that it would ever happen.
It's probably in there.
They're all playing the same extra 1, 2, 3.
Right.
We've done that before, though. There's a big rain. Par 5, par 4, par 3.
We've done that when it was in the USGA tournament or something.
Yeah, we moved the tee
Move the tees up.
Okay.
We do that at our own club.
So,
Western.
Number
13.
And then this note here just says that it's not a good idea to combine stroke play and match play. And whenever you do that, you should just make everything null and void. And because the rules are so different, that's not a good idea to do that. And also in stroke play, the committee may limit a referee's duties. So if you guys don't behave, we can restrict you of your
Lunch.
your lunch
Yeah,
your lunch abilities.
box lunch, yeah.
Yeah.
You will
Clio,
nothing.
You will not order off the menu.
How many times can we do this?
Hot dogs.
All right. The committee is in charge of making sure the course is set up correctly. So they need to define out of bounds. They need to define the water hazards, lateral water hazards, any GUR or under repair, or any obstructions in integral parts of the golf course out there. This just says that that it's important that all players play in a single round, play at the same hole, the same hole cut in the same place. However, if we did have to make a slight adjustment because the hole is damaged, that is possible to do, but it needs to be as close as possible in that situation. And so another situation where this came up in an event that I did, we did an event at Harbor Town in Hilton Head, and the superintendent there did not want, so we had two different courses, on the ocean course and they call it something else now, but I don't know. It was the ocean course and then Harbor Town Dolphins. That's what it was. But basically, it was on two different courses, but the divisions weren't on separate. So we had more than enough people on, or more. We had more people in one division than we could fit on one golf course. So on the second day they moved the cup like about two or 3 feet away from where it was, or like a pace away from where it was, but that was still close enough to be considered the same hole, because they didn't want to keep the holes the same. I mean, had that been the U.S. Open or something like that, they would have kept it the same.
Yeah.
But we weren't the U.S. Open.
That decision is 33-1/2. And no, you can't. You could cancel that round, but you couldn't make the first 3 holes the last 3 holes of the stipulated
What
round.
page is that?
Page 499. Number of holes of stroke play competition reduced during the competition.
Okay.
This is actually, it's worded a little different because it's the third round of a 4-round competition. But it gives you all the variables there. None of which include allowing you to rename those holes or replay those holes in a different order.
All right.
First option is preferred option to cancel the round after extensive play and reduce the number of rounds for competition.
I don't think you want D. Cancel the last 2 rounds.
Guidelines on canceling the round. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this just says here we get into, this is actually what we were just talking about. We'll skip the practice ground, but if there's no practice ground, the committee should establish a player or an area where the players can practice. So sometimes you may have an event. I know I've seen this at junior events where they've got 144 people playing, and the driving range is as wide as this room, or the putting green is as big as this table here. And what they do is they'll just say the 18th hole is going to be the practice putting green before play is started. Or they'll rope off a certain part of the green and say that's also the practice putting green.
And we'll re-roll it for competition.
Right. But then if the course is unplayable, so if the committee or its authorized representative considers that for any reason the course is not in playable condition, or that there are circumstances that render the proper playing of the game impossible, it may, in match play or stroke play, order a temporary suspension of play, or in stroke play declare play null and void and cancel all scores for the round in question. When a round is canceled, all penalties incurred in that round are canceled. So in this case, if we may have water building up in the greens, we might want to suspend play, and then at that point it just keeps raining and those puddles turn into lakes, and then we know that the course is not playable. So at that point we have some options, as that decision states. You can either come back the next day, or you can cancel the round completely, and then start over. or shorten the tournament. If it's a second day, you could just cancel that day and then just use the first 18 in that case.
Then the Senior Open last year.
What if somebody gets disqualified in the first game of play? If
Yes.
someone is disqualified and the round is discarded,
Yes.
They're back in it.
then the penalty goes away. It tells you the
well, yeah, the penalty, but that's like severest.
No, but it does go away.
disqualification is
Yeah.
still a penalty.
Now there is an exception to that if the disqualification penalty is for like code of conduct or if they let's say that they came and they followed. Yeah, exactly. In that case, that penalty could still carry on. But if it's just because maybe they didn't sign their scorecard, if that round's canceled, then they're back in it. And I think this happened. This happened last. So here, this 33-2D/1 is guidelines on whether to cancel a round. And stroke play, in what circumstances should a committee cancel a round? There's no hard and fast rule. The proper action depends on the circumstances in each case and must be left to the judgment of the committee. Generally, a round should be canceled only in a case where it would be grossly unfair not to cancel it. For example, if some competitors begin a round under extremely adverse weather conditions subsequently worsen and further play that day is impossible. It would be unfair to the competitors who started not to cancel the round. So I think this happened at the Farmers 3 years ago, I want to say now, where it was just blowing crazy. And
The wind and the rain.
it was just
so
really
severe,
nasty. And the PGA Tour decided not to cancel it, and the players did not like that. But I think one of the guys that played in the weather actually ended up winning, so it all worked out. But yeah, I remember watching Billy Horschel on the par 3, and it was the wind was blowing so hard that he had to turn his hat around backwards because if he kept it forward, it was going to blow off his head. And it was like a 140-yard hole, and he hit like this knockdown 5-iron. It was still 20 yards short. It was blowing that hard.
Wasn't that the one that Snedeker won?
That was the one that Snedeker won.
He'd finished
done.
and then
Yeah.
for a day or something.
Right, exactly.
Before you ever knew it was the win.
Right. Yeah. And then this past year, I think maybe it was over the winter or whatever, but on the KLPGA, the Korean LPGA, they had an event where they had an issue with how they define the putting green, and it caused so much problems that eventually, so they didn't know what to do because half the field thought that this fringe was the green and half of them played it didn't, and so what they decided was that they're going to I think first they decided to keep the round, and then one side of the players said no, like that's not fair.
Well, a third of the players got penalized.
Right. Okay. That's what it was.
Third, come on.
Yeah. Third of the field's penalized because they thought what it was the fringe was green.
Mark the ball.
The way it was marked. And then they were penalized after the fact because they had to go back to television to pick up all the people that didn't get the penalty.
Right.
And then ultimately what happened was that director resigned.
Well, and I think what happened was they just nulled.
They nullified the round.
Yeah.
The whole round?
Yeah. And then the tournament director, the rules director, resigned after that event. So yeah, it's interesting.
He took the hit for all of it.
Sure. Yeah.
Bad Rover, right?
Right. Well, I think the reason that
Of course, set up.
yeah. I think the reason that they ended up doing it was because I think they initially, if I remember correctly, they initially penalized them. Then they decided that we're not going to penalize them. Right. And then the people that actually followed the rules said, well, yeah, you've got to penalize them because those players had the ball in hand and were able to basically put it where they want, line up their line, and and I could see why that would be an issue. If you're not lining your ball up when it's on the quote unquote fringe or putting green when the other people are, that's a big difference. You need to line your ball up, and so they ended up just washing it. which the players that played well didn't like.
No.
When was that? Was that recently?
I think it was this year. I think it was in January or January, maybe January or December. It was, yeah.
Which
Remember that
one
one.
was
The Korean LPGA tour.
Oh, Korean.
Yeah.
No wonder I didn't hear about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they had it. They had it on the
Channel
ground.
Curry,
You know what?
was such a huge uproar.
What's the Korean channel?
And it wasn't that long after one of Lexi's
Yeah.
faux pas.
Oh, yeah.
So they were still talking about her when this came up.
She needs a walking referee.
Just saying about
Poor
her.
girl.
Okay.
Seems like she gets everything.
I'll volunteer.
All right, the committee must establish the starting times, and then matches, they need to establish a time or just to pick a by date. So a lot of times at the club level, you'll see we'll just say complete by the end of June or complete by June 30th. That's fine. Frank and Dennis can figure out when they want to play their match. The committee must publish a table including how the handicap strokes are allocated. And so a lot of times if we do this, we'll just use the course's allocation unless we don't think that it's correct, and we'll change it. And then the committee is responsible for the addition of scores and the application of handicap, as we talked about. And the committee needs to create a scorecard for the groups. Whatever. Ties. So ties need to be defined, or how ties are defined need to be set by the committee. And I think on page 569 and 570 is where the USGA recommended method is, which is what we use for our events, so we don't have either a playoff or extra holes in match play. So basically what it is we'll use the last 9 holes, and then if that's still a tie, the last 6 holes, and then the last 3 holes, the last hole, and then keep going back from 18 backwards until we have a winner.
And then that's in a decision?
It's not in a decision, it's in the conditions, I think, of the
Yeah,
competition. It's
condition of competition.
569, 570.
Number 10.
Number 10 out of the side times.
Next page is the match play.
Yeah, so you better always play better on the backside
Exactly.
to start.
So you want to start on 10. You want to split 2.
The last 9 holes, so the back 9.
So you say now he plays better on the last 9 holes. So we got to make sure where we start.
Right.
Remember that this year, right?
Yeah.
And that's also a good point. If we do have a double T start, it's not their last 9 holes, it's the last 9 holes, so it's going to be 10 to 18 is what we're looking at.
Right.
So it doesn't change based on if the player started on 1 or 10. It's always going to be 10 to 18.
Well, unless we have a shotgun, he starts on 3.
Well, even then, though,
He's still going to play 10 to 18.
Right, yeah,
It's
exactly,
just
yeah.
his last 9
Right.
holes.
Yeah, those
Right,
last that
right,
those
yeah.
10 to 18, you got to play good
Yeah.
back there
Exactly.
in case you get in a tie.
All right, 33-7, we kind of talked about this, but basically this is a player, a penalty of disqualifications may be waived, modified, or imposed by the committee. So if we have a really bad breach of etiquette, we can impose a penalty of disqualification under this rule. We may also be able to waive a disqualification penalty under this rule as well.
Like that was your guys starting early there at Oakland Hills. 3 of the 4 players in the group. We didn't hear the horn, even though the pole was stuck to our head.
We didn't hear the horn.
Right.
That was the horns that didn't work, though.
I'm sorry?
Those horns didn't work either.
The course horns did. But our air horns didn't work well.
No,
No,
our
because
air horns were not.
We had blown them so many times because of the weather.
Yeah.
They didn't work
Right,
well
yeah.
for the resumption of play. And he says, we didn't hear it, well, but the course horn, and we're standing right there. It's literally 40 foot from where these guys are hitting.
Right.
We didn't hear it.
Yeah.
So we hit early. But only 3 of the 4 players. The 4th player knew.
Right.
And then they were playing left clean in place
Yeah, exactly.
all the way around.
The
The
rest
first
of the
2
round,
holes.
they decided by
In a Hartman tournament? Come on.
No, there was the
Because they
USGA one too. He
Yeah.
was there.
Oh,
That was the team
When he found
qualifier
out
for
about
USGA.
that, oh, jeez, I thought
They
he was
told
going
him
to.
it's
He's going like this from 2 fairways over. And I didn't do it.
We told
I'm
him.
gonna-
We told him several times. We had 40 guys underneath the cover there on hole 12 on the north course, and John was with us.
Yeah.
Right.
We made an announcement.
And we made the announcement repeatedly at resumption of play. If your ball is still on the course, you can lift it, clean it, and place it. At the resumption of play. It doesn't mean all run.
So I got this new guy. He's waving me over after 2 holes. I'm waving, and he says, "Where can he move it in the trap? They've been moving the ball every hole shot." I go, "What? Yeah, they're playing winter rules." Winter rules. My God, I was scared to call Lee.
Well, we had Lee over there. We had
Oh,
John
my
over there.
Yeah.
We called Ken. We had everybody over there. Oh, my.
Yeah.
They pleaded ignorance.
Oh yeah, 3 guys are playing it left clean in place winter, and the 1 guy's playing it down. He says, "I heard it." So
So you can only plead ignorance so much.
And then here it says any penalty less than disqualification must not be waived or modified. So we can't modify a 2-stroke penalty down to a 1-stroke penalty, for example.
even if it's a shitty rule, according to
Exactly.
Lee.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, and this just talks about a serious breach of etiquette. We'll, I guess, I mean, we're probably not going to get there at 18 and 19, so I guess we'll
Tanya.
go through about it. But yeah, if you pull Tanya Harding, that's going to be a 33-7 infraction.
Make a movie 20 years later. Get rich.
So a serious breach of etiquette is behavior by a player that shows a significant disregard for an aspect of the etiquette section, such as intentionally distracting another player or intentionally offending someone. Although a committee may disqualify a player under Rule 33-7 for a single act that it considers to be a serious breach of etiquette, in most cases it is recommended that such a penalty should be imposed only in the event of a further serious breach. So if we do a warning and then a kick out, but if it's very, very bad, we can just go straight to the kick out. And ultimately, the application of the penalty for a serious breach of etiquette under Rule 33-7 is at the discretion of the committee.
So snapping a club over your knee, it's just normal.
We had a junior in the state championship. Number 1 player on the team. Most of his 7-iron over his knee. Was angry about the shot. We went and talked to the coach. Coach tried to calm him down. Kid hit a tee shot 2 holes later with his driver, and the head broke off his driver. So then he tomahawked the shaft.
Oh, jeepers.
So we talked to the coach and asked him, "How do you want to handle this?" He said, "I'll handle the discipline. He's disqualified for today, and he's going to set the rest of the term." So he set his number 1 player to make an example. Right thing to do. I mean, the coach was doing the right thing. The team was disappointed, but he was doing the right thing. And he said he'd had problems with the player all year. He said, so when you get to the state level, you can't have it. So he did the right thing. And I saw the kids.
Is that 2 years
I'm sorry?
2 years ago?
Yeah.
At the States, right?
Yep. West.
On the what? That was me. I saw him snap it.
I heard that he was throwing the shaft at Mick. Is that true?
I don't know the shaft. I didn't see it.
He took that club. When he hit the ball, it went into the trees because I was on the left side. And I looked back, and he was like this. Whack! I went, holy shit.
That was a 7-iron.
Yes. Yeah, because he was laying up.
That was before the head broke off. Right. That was 2 holes later. Just coach said he had a problem all year with his attitude and his anger. And just couldn't have it.
Yeah.
The only good thing, kid was a junior. We still have 1 more year to play. I mean, the coach still got 1 more year to teach and direct him and hopefully calm him down. But he learned the
You
lesson.
won't, no.
Oh, he had one more year to put up with it.
One more year to replace your clubs and try that. But he learned the lesson. The coach wasn't going to tolerate that.
Right. Which is good.
Number one player or not, this is, you're going to set because it can't have the attitude with the rest of the people out here. It creates a bad impression.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not only for the player, but for the school.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get people coming around here in those tournaments say, hey, I watched that guy when he came off the green, he was angry and he threw his putter in his bag. Man, that's not common, whether it's the state level or just a regular match.
Right.
And whether it's boys or girls, I mean, they all get frustrated.
Sure.
And that's more out of frustration than anger when they do that. And you missed a putt and you threw your putter down. You didn't throw it at anybody. It didn't bounce up and hit anybody. It's still the wrong thing to do. But you go to tell them, you can't have that. If you do it again, they'll penalize you for it. But I mean, I've only seen twice where something like that's happened, and the coach actually took the player out of contention.
Right. Great thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you should never have that with a player. In that high school level, that's ridiculous.
At any level.
Yeah, how many times have you seen a player at your club or at mine? And I know my partner was no exception. Over the years, I watched him break 2 or 3 putters, just slam it on the ground that would snap the head at the hosel, right? Because he was angry with the putt. And when they started saying that they were going to enforce the etiquette portion, I told him, I said, you've either got to calm down or you better buy a whole bag of putters. Because you're only going to play them one at a time. When they break, they're going to throw your ass out, and you're going to come back. But at some point, they can tell you, we don't want you to come back and play. And that's at their discretion. So you don't want to be too much of a jackass. It's all right to get frustrated, but not like that.
Right. Agreed. All right, let's finish up 33 really quick here. So local rules. The committee may establish local rules. And within the policy set forth in Appendix 1, which I believe starts on page 554. Yep. So a lot of times when we're putting in local rules at our level, it's just good to the USGA gives us some good direction on wording, and we just pretty much copy and paste right from here. And it can be anything from protection of young trees, ESA, just looking through things, drop area, embedded ball rule, et cetera, et cetera. I think TIOs are even under here, temporary removal instructions. Yep. Power lines and cables, lots of different things in here that we use on a fairly frequent basis for our events. Yep.
This is the one that also covers distance measuring devices.
Okay, right.
It's under local rules.
Under local rules, yeah.
Which will be in the rules next year.
I'm sorry?
It'll be in the rules next year.
Yeah.
Correct. They're just changing the default, so to speak, right?
Yep.
Now, these ESAs, though, you see them on a lot of these courses that we work in, and we get, the rover tells us they're not. Just because the sign is there that the course put up, that is not.
The course that can't declare it an ESA.
Right. You have to, we have to,
It has to be the
committee's got it.
No, it has to be the EPA or something like that. It has to. Yeah.
So you can't make a local rule?
No, not this year, but next year we'll be able to call them a no-play zones, and you can change that so that anyone can. So these ESAs that everyone has their signs for, they'll just be called no-play zones, and the same restrictions that are in place now for environmental sensitive areas will be in place for that. But yeah, right now I think Ken told me once there's like 2 or 3 courses that have actual official ESAs in Michigan.
Right. I know there's a couple of them up north that, in order to build the course, they had to go through the state.
I'm trying to remember there's 2 or 3 up north.
Yeah.
Stonehenge is marked on the north course, but I don't think that's state certified. I think it's just a course.
Yeah, a lot of them just have signs that they buy it there, but they're not really,
Right.
Keep people out.
certified yet.
Well, they
I mean,
have,
they're
Michigan State,
they're certified to different levels. It's like wetlands versus an actual ESA. So,
Michigan State has a thing over there in Stonehenge, where they've been researching bird migration and stuff. So they've marked those as protected areas, and you don't go in behind 15, 6, 7, somewhere around there, around 18 schedule. But yeah, they're not state or EPA certified. It was just Michigan State University mark.
right. Yeah, it says here, if an appropriate authority, example, a government agency or the like, it's got to be it has to be some official.
Should be certified by.
Yeah. But, we won't have to worry about that for this year. Next year, Kyle Wolf or Ken Hartman can determine the no play zone. So,
Yeah.
It'll look fine.
But wait until Dan takes a stance over
all right, and then here, last thing here, waiving or modifying a rule. A rule of golf must not be waived by local rule. However, if a committee considers that local abnormal conditions interfere with the proper playing of the game to the extent that is necessary to make a local rule that modifies the rule of golf, the local rule must be authorized by the USGA. So it's not saying that you can't make a local rule. You can prescribe or ask the USGA to consider a local rule given the circumstances, but unless it comes from the USGA or is in the book here, which you go to 33-8 in the decisions, there's a whole slew of them of whether you can or can't make local rules for certain situations. So it starts on page 519, and there's just a whole bunch of them in here in terms of what can be local rules and what can't be. And then here's just some last key decisions from 33. And in terms of next week, we'll cover 18 and 19, which we're supposed to cover this week. And we'll go over that, and then probably just a few other random ones if we get to them. And then that is going to be the last one.
No.
So for the year, and then we're working on putting together a rules test for you guys to take, and we'll have that up shortly. A rules test.
Another one?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, okay, Carl's premium.
Yeah. This one won't go as hard as Carlos.
Did you take,
Did you take the last one?
the last one?
No, I didn't.
Are you gonna
Have you taken them?
I haven't taken February, but I
You didn't take the
Or
last
the
one?
la-
February?
Yeah, I took the last
Or
one.
March?
I just did the March one.
Yeah, the 15.
questions. With the extra credit question.
Yeah.
Actually,
Oh, yeah. You got
Yeah.
That was the easiest one of all. It was easy.
All right, well, again, just thank you all for coming out. Appreciate it, and we will see you all next week.
Kyle, are you going to put this on the website?
Yeah.
Because I have a doctor's appointment at 1:45 next week, so I'm not going to be able to make it.
Yes, it'll be on the
You
website.
know, older guy named Ted Marsh. I know the name, but I didn't know. Yeah, he was probably pretty old.
Thanks, Kyle.
He was retired.
Thanks, Dan.
T.H. Marsh.
Really?
Good job.
Thanks, Kyle.
General contractor.
Except this stuff.
Well,
job.
He was a member of West Point.
Oh, yeah. Well, no,
Oh.
okay. Please. this
Yeah, I
time
was
is
there,
just-
well,
It's
two
bad
days ago,
because-
off, and we're out taking
Yes.
signatures.
And you
Kind of would like to look at some
You know, I
signatures,
have to
and keep
find-
going.
You may change your
Works
word.
on the health insurance business, and Obama says he be
All right.
You know, I wasn't sure.
She's saying, I thought I just heard a phone ring.
Yeah, he's missing the White House.
So, yeah, but
I'm not always sure whether it's
Gotta
mine
be
or not.
there in 2 hours.
I don't have an actual ring. I got some kind of sound, but I don't remember what
I
it
never
is.
played it, I don't think.
What, Jeff?
I'm pretty sure it's like at the restaurant.
They've had some of those GAM days.
Just because of the sound.
Yeah,
Oh,
just GMA days are like almost every Monday, aren't they? I'm kind of looking at those things. I was like,
So
oh,
I have, I'm waiting for him to
Dan's
find-
in charge of those.
yeah.
Which is my years.
I got
As much as I play, you know,
I don't play much anymore.
I still wanna know how you played him. How you played the
What
embedded
time is the
ball
meeting?
below the grass in a bunker.